Tony Evans, who, is woke. He's espousing this KRT, Kingdom Race Theory. And anyone out there that wants to Google Kingdom Race Theory and Tony Evans, you can see the videos for yourself. I'll warn you, though, it's very slick. If you are an average Christian and you do not know how to do inductive Bible study, you will hear scriptures quoted well, but out of context.
Yeah.
You will hear passages of scripture that sound very appealing to the aura of the world today and put in a context to where you're like, wow, I get it. And he is leading people to being woke very, very convincingly.
Yeah.
So he basically espouses the fact that critical race theory is addressing the racism in the fabric of America, in the systems, in the economic systems, in the political systems, and all of the structures. So he takes critical race theory and he clearly says that is a Marxist philosophy. And he takes that and he says, in our day, we've added the BLM movement and organization to it, but he differentiates between the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black Lives Matter organization. He says the organization, and he's right, that is against the nuclear family and for LGBTQ. So he separates that from the Black Lives Matter movement and says, we need the movement. We need folks to know that Black Lives Matter. And he conflates that with Anglo or whites or conservatives who say unborn babies' lives matter.
Yeah.
So very convincing in how he lumps these things together. And then he brings in the 1619 Project and says that America wasn't founded in 1776. It was founded in 1619. And the reason America was founded was so that white people can get wealthy off the backs of the slaves. That's how America was established. That's why, that is the definition of America. And so the laws that were made to protect those who were getting wealthy were made at the expense of Black people. So the very fabric and everything in America is woke. And what that logically leads to is the evil left political's agenda to completely crush and annihilate and destroy America and rebuild it in a communist way. Yeah. It gets real fast. And he substantiates using a Marxist theory to prove his point, and then he adds it to the gospel, and he misrepresents Galatians chapter 2. I'm floored at how well he's able to say it in a convincing way, but it is so wrong. So he says that Paul did racial reconciliation to the racist Peter in Galatians chapter 2, verses 11 and following.
In Galatians 2:11 and following, Paul condemns Peter for his racism against the Gentiles, and he says to him, you are not acting in concert with the truth of the gospel.
And it is not about racial reconciliation.
No.
I'm floored. Look, Galatians chapter 2 and verse 5 is saying that it's the truth of the gospel. That's the context of this passage. Galatians chapter 2 and verse 14, about the truth of the gospel.
Yeah.
So the essence here is that Peter was shrinking back from the newly converted Gentiles and gravitating to the Judaizers. And in doing so, his association with them was saying to the Gentiles that we need to add the law to the gospel. And so therefore, Paul noticed that the gospel is compromised here in their mind. Peter, don't shrink back. This is not good. And so Paul corrected him.
Yeah.
That's the context here. It's so easy to read that.
Absolutely. Galatians it's not about it doesn't have anything to do with race, for one thing. I mean, and to quote Daryl Harrison and Virgil Walker, they say races don't reconcile, hearts reconcile. We're reconciled to the gospel. That's the reconciliation. We're reconciled to God, I should say, to God through the gospel. But there's only one race anyway.
Right.
There's only one race. There aren't many races. There's one race, one. That's it. So this was a theological issue. This was a gospel issue in Galatians, it was not about quote unquote race.
Yeah. And to continue on this thread, you would take and say, okay, well, average Christians could easily be fooled by this because it seems right on the surface. The scripture sounds good. You're loving your brethren. You want everybody to be unified. This is the claim. This is what's being set forward. However, a worldly Marxist theory cannot be mixed with scripture to guide our lives.
Right.
It's never going to end up right.
Never, ever, ever.